Welcome to Thriving the Future podcast, where we're finding positive solutions to thrive in the tough times ahead. Okay, welcome back to Thriving the Future. Last week, we talked about how I arrived at thriving, my meandering story on how I arrived at thriving. And this week, we're going to talk to Perpend.
You know what? We've inappropriately named this podcast.
What's that?
We're only going to thrive in the future. We're never going to thrive now. This is a problem. It just hit me as you were doing the introduction there that
That's funny.
we're only thriving in the future, not now. Suffering forever.
Or maybe we're making the future thrive.
Right,
so
but
thriving is in verb of the future. We're thriving now and the future.
I hope. Sorry. Rabbit trail.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Where you want to start at? So how did you arrive at thriving?
I'm not sure I've totally arrived at thriving yet. I've arrived at a place where I can see what thriving looks like.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I need to continue to work on myself to make that fully realizable, right?
Okay.
It's unstable. How's that? My I get in my way. I sell eggs for $2. It doesn't. That was a problem. I am basically Charlie Brown. Lucy puts that football out there and says, "Let's go plant milkweed." And I'm like all running to go plant milkweed. And everybody goes, "Well, that was just a suggestion. We're not really doing that." And I'm like, oh.
We're not really doing it?
I'm halfway there. I mean, I got seeds in the mail. We're not doing that. Oh. But it's like that with everything, right?
Yeah.
Somebody suggests it, and I'm after it before you're really in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I plant it and then have what do they call that, a level 1 or stage 1 error in permaculture?
Yeah, this may be even before stage 1 because, I'm already into execution and everybody else was just brainstorming.
Right.
But I do it on too many projects, and that keeps me out of thriving, right? Because then I'm constantly sending my focus and attention in the wrong paths.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we could back up and look at when I didn't know I was thriving, how I realized I needed to thrive, and then how I realized kind of what that was, right?
Okay.
We'll just do that kind of.
Sure.
So, I was young, and they told me that the president runs the country.
They lied to you.
Well, not only that, but they got my attention with that, right? Because he runs the country. That makes him important. If he's running stuff, then I better be paying attention to him.
Interesting.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm like in 3rd grade, and I'm watching primaries. I am watching debates, because these people are what is making the world function, right? So I need to pay attention to them.
So that ties in with what you were saying about you were watching C-SPAN, right?
Up until,
frequently, yeah.
I mean, there was this thing called Hillary Care, and on C-SPAN they had the committee hearings.
Right.
Not the floor debates.
Yeah.
Not the big hearings. The subcommittee hearings where I watched all of those. Mm-hmm. I watched them vote after vote after vote. You're not supposed to watch a sausage made. I watched a sausage being made. And I said, these people aren't fixing it. But before we even got there, though, I realized there was a problem that these adults that were supposedly running things were like most of the other adults in the world. They couldn't remember where they put their keys. They couldn't remember whether or not they were bringing everything out of the restaurant with them. Did they leave their purse? Did they leave their notebook? Did they leave their briefcase, right? And me being the observant, detail tracking person I am, I'm like, well, you didn't pick up that. You didn't get this. And you didn't get that. Well, where is it? It's over there. You set your keys over there, and you set your keys over there, and you put your purse over there, and you hung your coat on the 3rd hanger in on the right.
And so you misunderstood that adults should be purposeful and focused.
Intentioned. organized.
Yeah, and intentional. Yeah.
And organized, right? And that
Huh.
they're running things, right? So if they're running things, they must have a system to do it, and they've figured out the puzzle and had the puzzle working properly, right?
Uh-huh.
That's the idea you're sold when you said, this guy is in charge of the world, or this guy runs the economy, or this, right? And I'm watching these people, and I'm going, these are like all the adults I know.
They don't know
Well,
what they're doing.
I know what I'm doing, right? I am fixing these people's organizational problems. I am keeping these people on track. I am managing people. I should not have been, but I was, right? So there's a way to manage this.
You were managing the adults in
Yeah.
your life, your parents and stuff?
Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
Because, they leave things everywhere, or they
Right.
can't remember where they said it, or, that whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was negligence, right? To me as a child.
Okay.
This side of it, I can say that, well, there are a few more important things going than where exactly I set my keys, right?
Sure.
Right? But to me, it looked like negligence. And when I looked at politicians, I saw the same thing. And I said, well, if you can fix this, then you can fix that.
You must have been disappointed at a young age.
By high school, definitely completely angry,
Disillusioned.
way past disillusioned.
Wait. I can't imagine you angry.
It's good. But that's progress. That's no longer surviving. That's getting.
I've seen you annoyed, but I haven't seen you I haven't.
Yeah.
I can't imagine you angry.
And that line is very fine, and it switches very quickly, and it's not good. Anyway, so I was very angry, and so before I got angry, I was writing politicians, right? You're supposed to write them a letter, tell them what you think, and they're supposed to represent your opinion, and you start getting replies back that they agree with me. I go, wait a minute, you don't agree with me, because you said, I agree with you that we should. And then you stated the exact opposite of what I thought we should do, which is what you were originally intending to do. You're supposed to be representing constituents and voters, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can't even hear what I'm saying.
That's like when you watch an interview with somebody and they're lying, and they say yes, but they're shaking their head no.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing.
Subconsciously.
Right.
Yeah.
But I remembered what I'd wrote them, right? I mean, so...
Uh-huh.
And most everybody else is too busy and doesn't care anymore, right?
Yeah.
And most people go to, I don't care. I went to, but the Constitution says that you're supposed to represent me.
And the only people who care about the Constitution are the people out here that haven't figured it out yet. That nobody else cares about the Constitution.
Right. But I was still in that the mindset and the worldview that we wrote it down on paper. This is what we intended to do. Right. I now know that when we write it on paper, we intend to do the opposite.
That's rough.
Yeah. Huh. So I was very angry. I was very upset. This is pre-Ron Paul revolution. All those libertarians that talk about their Ron Paul kids. I knew who Ron Paul was before they did.
Yeah. Well, that's right? like the bills in Washington where they name the bill the opposite of what the bill is, like religious freedom law. Right. And then it has something in there that's
you know what that is?
Yeah. Well,
it's marketing and propaganda. It's narrative control. Is to make you think, hey, this guy did good stuff. Let's vote for him again.
Right.
While they do what they really intended.
Sure.
When they write it down, it's to trick you. Have you ever read a contract? What is a contract? It's a bunch of legalese to get you in trouble if you step out of exactly what these lawyers want. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Politicians, most of them are lawyers. And
right.
when they're not, they hire lawyers. And lawyers write the bills. This is the system we have.
Or lately they've been taking them from think tanks, which are lawyers writing the bills. Yeah.
Right. So in middle school, I was very angry. Going into high school, I was really, really angry with them. I was like, we have to make the Constitution function the way the Constitution's supposed to. So I started researching the Constitution. And then I started learning about how we got to the Constitution. I started going, wait a minute. We were hijacked. I started to become very despondent and in despair because this has been a problem longer than it's that I can imagine, right? I couldn't find a beginning where we were free.
Wow.
I mean, going back before the Constitution, before the Articles of Confederation, before the King of England, the first one, maybe, no. And then, right, and everything I had been told was not lining up with reality.
That's funny.
And I had to deal with that. It wasn't pretty. And at the same time, I was a teenager.
Yeah.
That just probably didn't help, right?
Sure.
Well, my solution was, okay, let's sit down and figure out who all we have to kill to get a system to function properly. And I started looking at those numbers. And at this point, I had good understanding of World War II. I had a good understanding of Hitler. I had a good understanding of World War I. And those kind of patterns throughout history, right? And I started looking at all the people that disagreed with me that I would have to remove from the situation to be able to get the situation I want. And that answer scared me. So then I had a new problem. I could be Hitler.
Right. Half the people on Twitter today are saying the same thing. They just don't realize it.
Oh, right. They could totally be there, but they have not hit the realization that I could, if I wanted, become this evil character, and that's wrong.
Right. Correct.
So if that's wrong, then there's something wrong in my thinking if that's my solution.
Mm-hmm.
If I end up there, my means have a problem. Because the ends do not justify the means. I mean, that's clear. So I had to start rethinking. I had to start rethinking what's important. And somewhere in here, I get really sick. Physically. From just all the medications, the multi-chemical sensitivity stuff starting to come out really bad, the allergies and the medications all just combining with my body just basically shutting down, right?
Right.
The middle of high school, sophomore year of high school. And that lasted till, with varying levels, till about 2017. So that's about 1995 to 2017, dealing with that while rebuilding this. Okay, obviously I see the world wrong. What's really important? If you're not going to become Hitler, you have to see people as people. If you're going to see people as people, then you have to remove all your assumptions, all your worldview analysis. You can't see them as groups. You have to see them as individuals and realize that any individual is not necessarily in that group because they 100% agree with that group, right?
Sure.
How many Republicans, Democrats, or Libertarians do not agree with 99% of what their party leader says, does, or wants?
Or they don't know.
Or even the platform. But
right. All they know is the propaganda.
We're not talking about what they know. They're in those parties for a reason. They're in those because they need to vote, because voting is important, because the president is important, and the president runs the world, right? That's where I was. That's where they taught me to be, right? And that's not true. And I can't hate them because they're ignorant. Well, I can, but it doesn't help because I become Hitler, right? So I have to see them as people. I have to see that their reason for doing this is not the group label. And when you start looking at people as people, everybody at a basic level wants food, shelter, entertainment, and a good life, right?
Mental sour greenies.
They want to die peaceably. They want to suffer as little as possible.
Right.
They want to get along with people. They want things to be fair and just. All those things. Every human wants those.
Sure.
I started going, well, then, if everybody wants this, why is that not what we got? We have wars, we have fighting, we have thieves, we have robbers, we have poor people, we have rich people, we have mean people, we have, we have stupid people, we have intelligent people, we have hapless people, we have bandits, right? I mean, we got all four.
Going back to that episode we did a few back, right?
Right.
What was that?
The 5 laws of
The
stupidity.
5 laws of stupidity, right?
And so what's going on? And this is where your mind really explodes, because you go, well, if nobody really wants to be at war, how do we end up at war? And you realize they do it by controlling the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Because innately, the logical mind wants to create a story out of the little pieces of information coming at it to try and order it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the logical mind is not the place to create order in the universe, your mind, yourself, your being, or your world. That's a whole separate conversation.
Okay.
That's probably 4 or 5 episodes right there, right?
Yeah, sure.
But it's trying to do that. And when your logical mind tries to do that by itself, you get into trouble. But it can be manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
We watched this happen with Ukraine recently. We've watched this happen with World War II and World War I,
right,
where we said, well, that guy wants to come kill your family. That guy wants to rape your wife.
Sure.
That cultural person is now called this derogatory term.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to use any of this. We all know them, right?
Yeah,
There were names for the Japanese. There were names for the Germans. There were names for people of color. There were names for, right?
Or even a good example that doesn't offend anybody is when they called the peasants out in the Soviet Union, when they called the peasants kulaks, and then they blamed, everybody's doesn't have food because of them,
right?
And we'll haul them off to the gulag, and then we'll take over their farms.
But playing on those things that everybody wants,
sure,
by interpreting the facts for them,
mm-hmm.
is how they control that, right? They've refocused the attention and get you to want to go to war.
Mm-hmm.
Because those people are going to hurt me, they're going to hurt my family, and that goes against what I want, right? And as you look at that and you start studying how they do that,
mm-hmm.
and I've studied a lot more of that now that we have the internet, and in recent times when they're all just out there blatantly saying it and people are still following along with the spells, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
I've really gotten an understanding of that from studying hypnosis, marketing, propaganda, and those kind of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those all play, but that's all narrative control. So just like in our episode, You're the Idol in the Temple of Twitter,
right?
That's what they're controlling. They're controlling your attention,
mm-hmm.
the way you perceive the world, and then the way you act in it. And I saw that and I went, wow, I've got to start questioning everything. There's no one I can trust. Then things like Katrina and Hurricane Sally happened.
Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, Hurricane Katrina,
yeah.
And then the one up north, it was Sally, right? The one that was in New York.
Sandy, it was Sandy.
Sandy.
Right.
That's it. Nobody came to help them.
Nobody.
There were people there to help them, but like in Katrina, they moved them all to a football stadium where there were no working sewers, so all the human waste is like piling up and people are having to live with it and deal with it in unclean, unsanitary, terrible situations, right? And I look at that and go, that means they're never coming to help me either.
Correct.
So not only are they lying, controlling the narrative, but they aren't even going to come help me when I'm in real trouble. I better be able to help myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I started to get to thriving.
Yeah, that's about where I figured it out too.
And so I started looking at how you do those things, right? And then, basic prepping is beans, bullets, Band-Aids, rice, wheat in buckets, right?
Mm-hmm. Which, most of that stuff you can't eat.
Right. And I started to discover that kind of around the same time, right? If I eat that, I stay sick and stay in this brain fog where I'm ineffective. I eat that, I stay sick, and I don't have the energy to do anything, and I got to sleep multiple hours a day more than any human should ever.
Sure.
Right? And those things didn't work, and I had to start asking, well, how do I do it?
Mm-hmm.
And that meant I couldn't even trust the people that were supposedly providing me an answer. Because their answer doesn't work in my situation.
Yeah, the answer may work for them, but it doesn't work for you.
It doesn't even work for them.
Well, yeah.
right? It doesn't work for them.
Mm-hmm.
The world we are coming into, you need skills over stuff.
Correct.
Stuff buys you time. Stuff gives you a little bit of leeway. But we're headed to a world where somebody's going to play out who I thought I was going to be when I was going to fix the situation and right the world. However that works.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of stuff can't be taken with you.
Right.
But what you have as skills, mental attitude, that can be taken with you. So to get to thriving at this point looks at continuing to conquer myself, because I am my greatest enemy.
Mm-hmm.
I now see the manipulation and control. Now I have to apply that and see where I'm not seeing the world in reality for what it is. Taking out my assumptions about people, right? I assumed that when people said they wanted to go plant milkweed, that was a intention, not a stray thought going through their head, and I went to try and act.
Sure.
That's a not seeing reality perfectly yet. And I've been through it so many times that, it's happening faster and faster that I'm breaking these down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why we've covered everything we have in this podcast so far, right? Because everyone makes a journey. And then several people have kind of hinted at it, or I think one's even said it, that, like they're just really trying to keep up with me as I move along, right? And it's like, I didn't present this quite fair, because it's not like this started 2 years ago like it did for most people, right?
Yeah, you didn't just come up with
2
these
years ago,
6 months ago when we started the podcast.
Right. Most people are kind of in that time frame going, oh, no one's coming to help me, I have to help myself, right? But we're looking at 20 or 30 years of walking through that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2020 was a culmination of it, but you were already partly there.
I was pretty much there. I was just trying to figure out,
but
what does this look like and how do I navigate?
These other people were not until...
Right, and so they are now at, where I was all the way back here going, nobody's coming to help me. It looks impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But the answer is in seeing people as humans and building human relationships and working together as people, because that's always what culture does, right? That's what humans do. Without that, we're not humans. We're animals murdering each other.
Mm-hmm.
We're not animals. We are humans behaving as animals.
Right.
Because we are not seeing each other as human, because we are not having interpersonal relationships, not having empathy, compassion, connection, fellowship, and building culture.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer relies in building those communities and those things, and that will get us to thriving, which is why we're doing this podcast, which is why we're doing the workshops locally, right? We are building those things.
Because if times get tough,
they're tough.
People are going to concentrate on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is food, shelter,
right? And it's wrong,
etc. But thriving is higher than that. Thriving is up there towards the self-actualization.
Well, the problem is that Maslow's wrong.
Okay.
An individual never solves food, shelter, and those survival needs
by themselves.
Right. So the first step is to find somebody you can work with.
Mm-hmm.
And the more someone's, the easier that happens by default, right?
Sure. But wait a minute. That's trusting too many people, and that's letting my gate down, and I got to worry whether they're clowns. I got to worry whether they're allies.
No, you don't.
You have to be
no. Right, I know. That's the wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
That's choosing to behave like an animal.
Mm-hmm.
That is not choosing to behave like a human.
Right.
Maslow's got it wrong. He has us starting as animals trying to solve surviving. You start as a baby with a mother and father or a doctor or an orphan carer, right?
Sure.
Changing your diaper and feeding you. Mm-hmm. If that does not happen, you do not get to grown up, right?
I mean past baby time.
But it didn't change.
Mm-hmm.
What happened is the narrative of those people that wish to control our actions and control the narrative have broken down those things in something called the culture wars. That's what we call it. Those culture wars have happened before in history.
Sure. They usually don't end very well.
They don't. We saw one of those in World War II.
Right.
That's the one people know.
And the barbarians and the Roman Empire and,
And Mao and Stalin and that, right? That clash of cultures always leads to somebody that thinks they have the solution that they can impose on everybody else. So the first thing you have to do is stop imposing your will on other people. You can't do that. You can't control people. You can't control the situation. You have to surrender that.
Right. But how's that overlap with, the libertarians who say, okay, well, that's the non-aggression principle?
No, it's not. It's not the non-aggression principle.
Right.
It's to see people as people principle.
It's the human principle.
Right. It's a relationship principle.
Yeah.
It is, because it's not about the aggression. It's about, to have a relationship with somebody, it has to have some basis in love. And love does not control another person's will by any way, shape, or form. The non-aggression principle tries to take that out of the equation.
Take the love out of the equation?
Yes. And the human relationship out of it. The non-aggression principle tries to force a situation where there is no violence against me upon other people. That's different than love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's different than... I'll just go ahead and quote that one too.
Yeah, but...
It's different than be like your creator who sends rain and sun on the good and the evil alike.
On the just and unjust, right.
Just and unjust, right. That is a different thing than I don't hurt you, you won't hurt me. That's negotiating a contract. That's what libertarians do.
Right.
Libertarians are like the lawyers. They're negotiating contracts. They're creating all these safety things, but a human relationship is never safe.
Sure. I mean, at the very least,
There is
your circle of influence and control overlap to some extent, and there's a Venn diagram in there where the two circles overlap. So if someone is not completely like you, sure, you might not have any aggression, but you're still influenced by each other. I mean, I still have to work with somebody that maybe I don't like or whatever, right?
Well, libertarians are also seeking 100% freedom, and you can't have that and have a human relationship.
Well, see,
because you have to compromise somewhere.
Right, but the NAP is also, it's so focused on almost like my body is my castle. It goes back to that whole, compound thing. We've got the castle doctrine, right?
I get what you're saying, yeah.
We've got, people are treating their body like it's a castle. Like it's the castle doctrine,
It's a materialist worldview.
Yeah, you better not screw with me or, but I won't shoot you, but,
it says that this material existence is all there is.
Exactly, yeah. Plus, it always assumes the good, and that if you completely go anarchy and you take away laws, then people will be nice to each other and by default. And what happens when law breaks down? You don't see people being nice to each other by default. So the very core of it is flawed.
When you break down the laws without anyone having gone through the realization that I cannot see reality by myself because of my assumptions, my filters, my worldview, and my blindness.
Right.
They apply the narrative that they have going on inside them of those things to the world, and they act on them.
Okay, so then if you take it like you were saying, then if you take the golden rule mindset, then you get stomped on?
Yes. Of course you will.
Or taken advantage of, maybe not stomped on.
Oh, no, you can get stomped on.
Yeah, I was being I was being generous. Maybe we're not stomped on, but, you know.
There's always a Judas.
There's always a Judas.
You go look at all the stories.
I know.
There's always a Judas, right?
I
know you hate that answer. But
no, I don't hate that answer. I find it funny because I knew you were going to say that. But, yeah.
There's always a Judas. You are going to get stomped on. You are going to get betrayed. You are going to get hurt.
And there's always a scapegoat.
But Maslow's hierarchy of needs does not work because it's upside down.
Okay, so let's...
With great risk comes great reward. You have to risk that I'm going to get beat down, that I'm going to be tortured, that I'm going to be hurt in this relationship. But give the person the opportunity anyway. Because that's the only way that we can build something that isn't going around murdering millions of people, turning us into Hitler. Each as an individual. What we have now is a bunch of Hitlers running around. Stay off of my lawn!
That's why they're calling everybody literally Hitler.
Keep it from happening ever again.
Exactly.
Everybody wants to tell their neighbor how to live their life. Everyone is acting like Hitler. Everyone is choosing to be an animal. And I shouldn't say everyone, because
you're making generalizations, but right.
And it's seeing people as a group, not an individual. Right? Right. That's a trap of seeing the group rather than the individual, right? There are a lot of good individuals out there really struggling to do it right.
Right.
And thriving is connecting them.
Thank you for listening to the Thriving the Future podcast. Check us out on the web on thrivingthefuture.com. Also, come and join our conversation on Twitter at thrivingthefute, and on our Telegram group, there's a link on the website. This podcast was produced by Scott the Freedom Farmer at freedomfarmer.net. Copyright 2022, thrivingthefuture.com.
Join us at the Homestead Journal in living out the classic homesteading ethos on the path towards a simple life that speaks to the heart of humanity. We're an online community embodying and helping our members develop an indestructible homesteading mindset. Become someone who adds walk to the talk and applies proven old world protocols in a modern context. Find us at thehomesteadjournal.net and follow us at thj.net on Twitter.
Are you a freedom farmer? Check out freedomfarmer.net, where I focus on skills over stuff and designing an intentional life. That's freedomfarmer.net. If you are interested in starting a podcast and you would like some consultation, how to find your niche, how to grow your audience, how to develop that consistency, contact me at thrivingthefuture@gmail.com.